Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to my presentation. It's a bit late in the conference, so awesome to see you all here. I'm a Thunder Biscuit. I work on the Bitcoin development kit, and I'll be presenting on our documentation efforts. So this presentation is about docs. I love them. I love docs. I'm one of these guys that just, when I see a good documentation website, bookmark right away. I learn from them, and I love that sort of stuff. So we'll be talking about that. And I can hear you say, but Mr. Biscuit, who are you? What do you do for a living? I work on the language bindings. So BDK is a gigantic project. My part of it is mostly language bindings. So we have BDK, if you're not familiar with it, is a Rust-based library, but we also have language bindings for Python, Android, iOS, a bunch of other stuff coming as well. So React Native, Flutter, you might know them. I also have a ton of side projects I've been working on over the few years. So opcode explained, you should definitely check it out if you have not yet. It's an encyclopedia of opcodes. BitcoinConferences.info, Padawan Wallet, which is a Signet wallet for learning how to use Bitcoin, and the Podman RegTest Infinity Pro. But let's get to it. I don't have a lot of time. Oh, can we start my timer so I see? No sweat. So BDK is a big project. He's a big boy. BDK is a big boy. We have 20 plus Rust crates, and so that covers a whole lot of stuff, including up to clients, Explorer, Electrum, as well as BDK, like the core of what BDK does, the wallet. Then we have like documentation. We have sample applications. There's a whole lot of stuff, and if you're familiar with Rust code, you know that to be one of the bros, every 6 months or so, you have to ask yourself, can I break this crate into 2 crates? Is that possible? So, of course, we've been doing that, and so we're now at a lot of crates. 4 libraries for language bindings, more coming. Come check it out. Talk to me if you're interested after this. We have 2 mobile sample applications. Those are pretty sweet. The iOS one you can download right on TestFlight right now. I forget the exact name on TestFlight, but those, and the same for Android, you can download it on our GitHub. You can find the releases. We have like a compact block filter version on Android. We have an Explorer, Electrum type, and those work with all the test networks. So they're kind of cool as developer tools as well. If you want to, you need a RegTest app to work at home, or Signet, or testnet 3, testnet 4, you name it. There's a CLI application as well, BDK CLI, which was like pretty okay for a while, and now is just an absolute power tool if you have not looked at it. It's a great way to play around. We also have a desktop app. So that's 100 plus contributors since inception, 5 full-time devs, many more that are part-time. We connect with other projects. If you've seen the Floresta presentations from before, yesterday or 2 days ago, there was a silent payment presentation. We also want to connect with that. The dev for that is right here at the back. And we have, of course, a lot of users across the stack, many in production. And so that brings in, as you know, a whole new set of issues that you don't imagine when you first start. Okay. Docs are a lot of things. You've seen this meme before, when the junior dev is like, but where are the docs? And the team lead is like, I am the docs. And then that's just where it is. So we don't want that. This is really not the BDK philosophy. I don't know who is Walter White in this. We'd have to figure out, but definitely that's not what we want. So, but I'll name a few things. And people say, you got to write to your audience, you got to speak to your audience. And of course, the issue when you're a large project or a small project is like your audience is very varied. And so that's a lot of things for a lot of people. So for us, it takes the form of a few things. First, API docs. So we have API docs all across our code bases, of course. High-level written documentation. This exists in a few different places, but these are like user stories. You're sort of like walking through tutorial type things. Examples that are directly in your repositories. So these are examples that get compiled as part of your source code, your code base. These get run every time there's a commit. very important. But we count them as, they're part of the documentation efforts, of course. We have sample applications, as I mentioned before. And we have maybe a newer arrival on the scene. The Book of BDK is about a year old at this point. It's something we're proud of and we've been working on. So I'll demo it a little bit later on, but that's maybe connected to my point number 2 here with high-level written documentation people can start with. And by people, I mean people in AI, of course, because at this point we know that AI is reading our docs, so that's another aspect. And figure out, am I going too fast? Next up is all the change logs and the release notes. So these are probably some of the first places developers go to when it's time for updating. You take a look at the change log. So it's important that the change log be clean and be representative of the changes, all of that. We want to build clean change logs and clean release notes. Those are part of documentation efforts. We have blog posts. That's an important one. We're talking about blog posts, of course, that we write in some cases, but also that external people write. So and this is something you don't have a lot of control over, but like students will do projects at school and they want to get, visibility. They have websites and they'll write blog posts about your things, and that gets picked up by, Google and whatnot. So you'll have like Medium posts and different websites will have people write blog posts. And then for us, we have YouTube videos. So BDK has a YouTube channel. We have maybe like 8 videos where we dive a bit more deeply into some of the topics. So about an hour each, and we try to dig into some of the. So I'll try to go over some of the success stories. Like I don't have time to go over all of the things I just mentioned earlier, the 8 items, but I do want to point a few of those out, and we're going to start with the Book of BDK. Let's see. So this is the website for the Book of BDK. It's just bookofbdk.com. You can check it out. And roughly, we hope that it's your entry point for BDK. So it will have like a lot of intro articles and like architectural stuff that explains to you what you're going to need, how does a BDK wallet work, that sort of stuff. And this, of course, complements well the API docs. So if you're familiar with API docs, they work well, but they tend to tell tiny stories about types and methods that are not really, they don't provide you a nice big picture. So we're hoping to tackle that here. And so from links to different tools, and maybe a big part of it is the cookbook here, where you'll have a lot of big, written stuff and code blocks that people can copy paste. Really cool thing, if you're not familiar with this is a static website generator called Material for MkDocs. And one of the cool things about it is that you can pull code blocks out of source code, like anywhere you want. So we actually, for the source code for this website, we have a bunch of examples that get updated. And those examples, you have like delimiters on the lines of your examples, and those get pulled directly into your code blocks. So the docs tend to stay up to date a little more, or it's more difficult for them to rot because they get compiled, basically. And we make sure they run. So that's a big part of it. And then we'll talk about the release guides with the notes a little bit later, and then some design things. So if you're familiar with compact block filters, or you're thinking about using compact block filters, we want to have places where you can read about that. And that's what this is for. That's one of our success stories. And it's also been this place where we can actually put a lot of our knowledge, basically. Next up, our sample applications. We talked about them earlier. I recommend you check them out. Again, quickly show them, but the iOS app is really polished. Matthew, the lead dev on this, has been working with the design guide. So he's applying like almost all the aspects of the design guide in this. So it's a neat little app. And then the Android one is not following that at all. That's mine. It's got a different flavor entirely. But again, it's one of these cool things. You can just download the APK, put it on your phone, use it with Signet. Like, that's useful. You're looking for that for testing and whatever. I recommend it. So yeah, one of these things. And some of those, for example, we have a lot of variants, but we've actually found contributors. You can see there's 8 contributors to this little Android wallet. One of them became a full-time dev on BDK, ended up getting a grant. You know, that's just how it went. So that really happy about that. And he found us through those example, and the CLI as well, which doesn't have a cool screenshot, of course, but is maybe the most power tool that we have out of those sample applications. So check it out. Right on time. So I want to talk about challenges if you're leading a big project, or you're thinking about, you know, going into a bigger project, or you know, some of the things that we've found are difficult. So I want to mention those and maybe, you know, spark some ideas for you. The first one is discoverability. You have so many docs in so many places that we talked about before, and it's sometimes people don't find them. It's surprising. People arrive. You know, we come into this building through different doors, you know, if you've heard that before. So it's like people arrive and that you don't even know where they come from. And they've learned about it from at school or some other Twitter thing, and they literally don't know about your things. I talked to a guy who's had BDK in production now for 2.5 years. He did not know we had a Discord server. It's just like one of these things, whereas if you speak to the team, we're like on Discord every day. That's our bread and butter. We'll always answer questions there, but this is a guy in production that was not familiar with it. And you have to understand also that people get inherited code bases, right? Like, this guy was not the initial guy that used BDK, so got onto the project about a year ago. He gets this code base. BDK is just a dependency. It compiles. He doesn't think about it too much, and so didn't know who to reach out to even just for help. So it's a good example of that. Lots of docs. Another challenge, I'm sure you're, you know, that's the most obvious one, but it's staying up to date. Staying up to date is really difficult. There's really 2 families of docs. If you want to think about like all of your documentation efforts, there's 2 big branches of them. The first one is the one which gets compiled with your source code. So like whenever somebody commits, what gets compiled against it, what runs in the CI, what gets, like, you know, checked. And then there's a whole other family of documentation that does not, and that is very difficult. And that's the one that is hard to stay up to date, and that rots. And I have some stories about that later on, but we find people will ask questions on older stuff that we haven't thought about in years, and they found it through a Google search, for example. So those are really important, and you can't really, you know, you can go too hard one way or the other, so it's difficult. You got to find a balance there. Because you can't have everything be compiled against your code. Like if you write a blog post, you know, but also those blog posts get out of date. Language bindings, I don't even want to go there. That's a whole other can of worms. They have their own API docs. They have their own stuff. It's just, it's also difficult to maintain. And the docs are also ported, and they need to be translated. It's a whole thing. Here's another challenge, kind of what I mentioned before. Docs die hard. If you write something today, it just stays. You will not believe. Like, people come to your Discord or come to send me DMs about issues they have, and they don't understand why it doesn't compile with their descriptor. I'm like, oh, what are you trying to build? And it's this old video series that I just recorded 4 years ago, and they're on like some super old version that nobody's thought about. But that's what they found through Google searches or different mechanisms. We had some blog posts on the bitcoindevkit.org website, which were a bit old, but that's apparently the path that this one guy had found on a React Native app, and he just couldn't make it work. And it's because it was a really old version that had been basically cleared up. But those get, you know, they just, I think, and I'm not, you know, familiar with exactly how this works, but I think they just like gain over time, like the ones that have been seen a lot. Like Steve had a podcast on YouTube a few years back about BDK CLI, and that's still the one that people come and ask questions about. So docs die hard. What you write stays for a long time, and part of my lesson learns you'll see later is about how to handle that. And lastly, there are a lot of secondary sources of documentation. So by that I mean all the documentation that you don't write yourself, you don't have control over. So that's like your students writing Medium posts about some of the things, or AI, of course, like not writing it well, because that's easy to do as well. We have also for us, I wrote this note here, like Bitcoin OpTech is always watching. Bitcoin OpTech will actually, look at some of our PRs, and they just like pick stuff up and then put it in the thing. And I talked to a dev yesterday, and he was saying, "Wow, if I knew they'd put my release note in Bitcoin OpTech, I would have cleaned it up a little bit, But you don't think about that. You just write your PR, and then it ends up in Bitcoin OpTech. So that's those are things you don't control. What's that? Always be clean. 10 minutes. All right, here we go. We've learned a lot of lessons through this, and this is not just me. Of course, we're all in this together, the BDK team. We're trying to, get better, and I have a few of those that I want to mention. And I'd love to, if we have a bit of time at the end for questions or whatever, I'd love if you, shout out your lessons learned about documentation, because we're looking to get better. And yeah, the first one I have for you is make it easy for people. And by that, I mean to find it, of course, but what I really find is to contribute to your documentation. It is surprising the number of people who will find you. If you call out for help, people will find this in some, I don't know where they come from just the woodwork, I don't know. But people will arrive. If you identify issues as being like good first issue, good docs, whatever. We had like the Book of BDK was on 1.2, and some dude a few weeks ago, no idea who he is, just arrived. He updated all our examples. That was like a few, certainly 1,000, 2,000 lines of code, updated all the examples to 2.2. Fantastic. And this is like, I had opened an issue, it was just floating there, and I don't know how they find them, but they do find them. So this is something you can do, is make it easy for people. You can have static URLs, right? If you've labeled your GitHub issues or PRs correctly, you can have static URLs that have the filter for like good first issue or good documentation, and you can click on that, and you'll always like have your top 4 issues that are related to documentation. People will come and do them. So yeah. Next is adjusting your docs when people ask questions. So that's a really big lesson learned, and that's one of the cool things I have for you today is try to find, whether you're a small project or a big project, try to find a location that is, you consider your sink, your knowledge sink. You can always dump knowledge into it, and this place should be really easy to reach to and easy to find, like in your mind. So if somebody comes in and asks a question, either on your IRC or Discord or whatever, and so for us, whenever somebody asks a question, it's one of 3 things. I know that either I have a link for them. It's like, oh, it's in the Book of BDK. Look at this. Or it's this example. You can look it up. 2, oh, wow, I should add it. So literally, I just write a note, or I open an issue, and then I'm going to write the page for it, or I'll fix the page that we have. I got a few questions. 2 days ago, somebody emailed me about zpubs, ypubs, if you're familiar with them, as opposed to expriv. I was like, oh, that's not part of the book, right? Or 3, it's completely out of scope, or the person has made a mistake, whatever. So, but this ability to have somewhere you can sync that knowledge immediately is really important, because you're going to have these instances where like somebody's asking you a question, DM or whatever, and you're like, do I take the hour it's going to take me to write this entire answer? Because it's a fairly complex thing. And if you're feeling like you're just going to write this ephemeral thing that goes in the chat and never, is just for one person, it feels less rewarding than if you feel like you're writing something, you're helping this one person out, but you're actually also building a blog post, you're building this next page for your documentation is really important. And what I think is happening for a lot of places is they don't have a place to dump that knowledge. It's just like they don't know where to put it. So if you have a place for you that's easy, you're just like, yep, you dump it in there. That's valuable. 6 minutes. Without automatic testing of your docs, they will rot. That's it. If you think you can just maintain markdown files, I'm telling you, you cannot. You cannot. Like, whenever you write documentation and code blocks, you think it's like the grand thing, it's the new thing, it's forever, and 6 months later, it's not. And now people run into bugs. Make it part of your workflow. That's another easy one. Change to documentation should be part of your PRs. So we have, I'll show later, but you can have PR checklists if you're familiar with that. When people open PRs, there's a whole checklist of things they need to do. You get desensitized to it as a developer. If you work on a code base for a while, it's always the same checklist. But for newcomers, they take it super seriously, right? Oh my God, I should really sign my commits. I should really, or you can remind them, and it's easy because it's right there in the PR. It's like, oh, you haven't checked this part, or you haven't, like, your commit message is incorrectly, formatted or something like that. Make it part of your workflow. Writing changelog entries is an example. Like writing changelog entries after the fact, like 2 months after, going back and reading the PRs, trying to write your changelog is an absolute pain. But if you write it on the moment it's done, by the person it's done, it's clean, it's easy. Lesson learned, write about the big picture. A lot of people write API docs and think that's enough. And of course I love good documentation, so I'm on the other side of this, but I'm telling you, it's not enough. Your API docs have little pieces of knowledge that are scattered across all sorts of code bases, and more or less, and I'm speaking to a room of there's a lot of Rust devs here, and more projects are starting to do bindings for those Rusts, things that are only available in Rust at the moment, and people will come to your libraries from your language bindings. They do not know how to read Rust API docs, which are, it took me a long time to get used to them. And it is difficult. It's very hard to just tell a Python dev or a Kotlin dev, hey, just go read these Rust API docs. That's very difficult. So API docs are not sufficient. They tell little stories about little types, but they're not combining these into big picture. How do you use libraries? How do, examples? And lastly, you should always have the version they're written against. So this will save you so much trouble. Like if you're on a podcast, you're talking about an API. If you're on, you're on YouTube, write say the version you're using it against. It'll make life much easier. When people see your videos, read your blog post, they're like, oh my God, this is 0.27, but I'm downloading 2.2, so clearly I have a discrepancy here. But we've done that for years where we didn't, and we have a lot of people, obviously, things don't compile. They just copy paste, but their cargo will download the latest version, and they're putting this into practice. So PR checklists, I won't spend too much time on this. If you're not familiar with them, this is what it looks like. When you open a PR on BDK, we have checklists of things you can do. So you have to say, I've signed all my commits, blah, blah, blah. And that makes it also easy for the maintainers to sort of enforce this. It's kind of like, hey, this is written. It's not me being an asshole, like, oh, please write your comments non-capitalized or whatever. It's like, no, it's in our thing. So that helps everyone. Have you written docs for this? Otherwise you'll get called out for it. Write it now. Same as I said before, but if you need to write examples, if you need to write release notes, if you need to write change logs, write it now. Write it in the PR. Don't wait until at the end of it, because then somebody's like trying to backtrack and write the change log or write your release notes, and it's very difficult to do, or it's time consuming, whereas the person who's like writing PR, you're into it, yeah, write an example for it. Always write an example. Architecture decision records. I want to mention this. This has been pretty cool, I think. We're not, there's not a million, but I think we have 3 or 4 code bases with them. If you're not familiar with architectural decision records, they are a sort of document that your lead developers or architects of your API will write when you make a big shift in your API change. And so when your API shape, and that helps further contributors when they come in, they can sort of like read about how this happened, context and problem, motivation, considered options, decisions, outcome, that sort of stuff. So this is documentation for developers of the library. So it's a bit of a different audience, but those are successful. We have 3 in this repo, 4 or 5 in the FF5, 3. So We've been writing them, and it's a shared responsibility. So when you see a big change, it's a shared responsibility. Maintainers should say, well, maybe there's an ADR that should be written for this. And the last PR from Steve had an ADR that came with it, and that's perfect. That's what you want. 1 minute. I want to talk about release notes a little bit that are part of the documentation. This is a newer thing for us, but we are, if you've seen, of course, the Bitcoin Core release notes, I mean, this is just top shelf release notes, but we're trying to do cool release notes as well. And so those would include a sort of blurb about what's coming up, what's different, so users can see, and then detailed pages on some of the new features with code examples, the reason why we did them, some of the things you gain from. They don't need to be big, but that's the kind of thing that beefs up your change log a little bit. And lastly, I think I'd be at this point, if I don't address AI, I kind of I'm missing something. So I think we know that it's important to that LLMs are reading our docs, and we should be making sure that they can parse our documentation well. It's just not something we've done so far super well, and we haven't looked into that too much. So if you know about this, please come talk to me after. We're looking for low-hanging fruit to start, but it's I think it's really changing in the way I use libraries now. It's often that I'll be sort of asking an LLM first, like how would you do this or whatever, and then I'll go into docs. So it's important that we write docs that can be easily parsed and used by LLMs. Thank you. 0 seconds, that's it.
Let's hear it for Thunder Biscuit, thank you.